Alright guys, so it's been a month since this game launched on the Xbox, so I'm going to get back to form now and get back to the Friday deck techs with week-long episodes. So for those of you who've joined me recently, you know what my format is. On Friday night I put up a new deck and then all week long I'll just play that deck. So this week is going to be Simic tempo, and the reason to play this deck is right here on the screen looking at you. It is Bounding Krasis. It's a 3-mana 3/3 fish lizard with flash, and when it enters the battlefield you may tap or untap target creature. Now if that's not a pushed uncommon, I don't know what is. I mean, that's just a really strong card. So we're going to build a blue-green, a blue-green deck that tries to bounce creatures, tap creatures, and just tempo them out with little bits and hits of damage here and there. So take you down to the bottom and walk you up the curve. So we're playing both copies of Harbinger of the Tides. It's 2-mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target tap creature and opponent controls to its owner's hand. Except with this guy, you can cast him for 4 mana at instant speed, and obviously do the same thing. So, I mean, it's very rare that you're going to play this guy in turn 2, because you probably won't have double blue anyway, nor would you want to. There will be times you play him for 2 mana later in the game to bounce something, but, most of the time you're going to flash this guy in to tap and, declare an attacker. And he's just insane. The flash is really good, so we're going to play both copies of that. All 3 copies of Undercity Trolls, since it's an uncommon. It's 2-mana 2/2 with Renown 1, which means that when it hits the opponent, it gets a +1/+1 counter, becomes a 3/3. And it has a 3-mana regenerate clause, which is, just all upside. This is probably our best turn 2 play in the deck. We just want to, play this. Your best line in this deck is Undercity Troll into Frostlink, swing Renown, and then you've got a nice board going. But I mean, there's only 3 of them. That's all we can do. There's been some discussion about what the best over on NGA about what the best 2-drop for this deck is. I don't think it's Timberpack Wolf. I think it's Elvish Visionary, because Visionary makes sure that you have the resources you need to keep tapping and bouncing and all that other sort of stuff. I mean, Timberpack is just a 2/2. I tried it in this deck in my first version when the game first came out. It's not that great. Visionary, if you're tapping and bouncing stuff, Visionary is still going to get in for a point of damage here and there. It's not uncommon for a Visionary to do 2 or 3 points of damage and draw you a card all for 2 mana. And again, it keeps you stocked up on the bounce spells and the tempo spells that you need to keep advancing your board and keep hitting your opponent. So I think it's the better 2-drop in here. We're playing all 4 copies of Disperse. I mean, obviously we're playing a tapper down deck, but instant speed is also really, really good, and this thing hits any non-land permanent. I'd find it hard to believe that anyone wouldn't want to play 4 of these in a deck like this. So we're going to play all 4 of those. Jesse and Thief. It's basically a scroll thief. Sorry there. It's a 3-mana 1/3 that when it hits the opponent, you draw a card. Except this little girl has prowess, so when you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1. The only problem is this deck down below, as you can see, is running 29 creatures, 24 lands, and only 7 spells. So you're really not ever going to trigger this girl, but what you will do is clear a path for her by bouncing and tapping. So even, you're not going to get her up to 2/4 very often. You're not going to trick your opponent with the prowess, but you will draw cards off her. Either by making her unblockable with Whirler Rogue or Rogue's Passage, or just, again, like I said, tapping, bouncing, getting shit out of the way. She's going to draw you cards. And she's complementary, to the Visionary. Keeps your hand stocked, and just make sure that you have, enough Frostlinks, enough Separatist Void Mages, enough Whirler Rogues, whatever, to get the job done. She's really good here. Frostlinks is our next card. We have all 4 copies of this. This is a card I underestimated here in the Origins format. 3-mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to tap target creature and opponent controls. And it doesn't untap, during its controller's next untap step, which is really good. Last year, this card was shit because there were just so many big fucking bombs in the format. But this year's format, at least so far, is a lot slower. It's grindier. The creatures are smaller. So he really fits the tempo game plan where you tap down an opposing creature, especially something like a Peerless Mirror, which is everywhere. You just tap it down, swing through it, and then they don't untap with it, and you can swing through it again. So I mean, Frostlinks is really, really good now this year. Bounding Krasis we talked about. Obviously, it's like I said, it's really, really pushed for an uncommon. Really sick card. Anchor to the Ether. Again, on NGA there's been some discussion, and I think Mobius is on the side of Wild Instincts over Anchor to the Ether. I disagree. I think Anchor is a great spell. It denies them a draw step. You get to scry 1. To me, that scry 1 there is really the key, but also the 3 mana cost. Wild Instincts is 4, and this is 3, and also Anchor doesn't get blown out by a bounce spell from the other side. I mean, Disperse is a fairly common card. Yeah, if you're not up against blue, then fine. There isn't a whole lot of instant speed removal to get worried about with respect to Wild Instincts, but there's still, Cruel Revival is a card. That sees a lot of play because Fleshbag Marauder is so insane. So I mean, I just think Anchor is the better spell. It's less mana. You know, you can play this and a 2-drop, or this and another 3-drop. You know, when you're on 5 or 6 mana respectively. You deny him a draw, which is great, but the Scry 1, the bit of card selection. So again, it goes back to the whole Jesse and Thief drawing cards, Visionary drawing cards, Anchor scrying away cards. So it gives us some good card draw, good card selection. Because if this deck enters the top deck mode, sometimes you're going to draw the wrong spell at the wrong time. You're going to flood out or whatever. But you know, these spells keep us stocked up on what we need to have. So then we have all 3 copies of Whirler Rogue. This card's fucking insane. If you haven't played with it, you really should. 4 mana 2/2, but it brings along a couple of artifacts. You do not need to play this thing in an artifact deck. Not at all. You can just drop it on the board and make anything unblockable for a turn. You get 3 bodies for 1 card. You know, if your opponent languishes you, you can just rebuild with this thing. It's just so good. You know, I mean, if you're in a stalemate, you just drop this, and you sneak through a Jesse. You sneak through a Jesse and Thief just to draw a card and deal 1 damage. You know, I mean, this card is fucking insane. It really is. You should play it. Next card, we're playing all 4 copies of Separatist Void Mage. Now, at first I started off with 2 because I thought, you know, a 4 mana 2/2 with a bounce effect is really nice, but I don't want to see it in my opening hand, or I generally don't want to cast it on turn 4, and I was wrong. This card is really good. It fits the tempo game plan. It builds your board while depleting their board. It's good against auras. You know, I used to play 2 of these and 2 Claustrophobia. But Claustrophobia just taps down their guy. This bounces their guy and gives you a dude. And that's the thing, while we're tapping and bouncing, we have to be dealing damage on the other side. And just Void Mage does it all. You know, he really, really does it all. He's a great card in this deck. You know, I can't say enough about him. Really good guy. Outland Colossus. Seen some lists play Willbreaker here. You know, I've also seen a list on NGA recently. Went up to play Capture Kite Fins. I think Outland Colossus is where you want to be. I'm sorry, it's a 5 mana 6/6. They can't double block it. And if you renown it, it's just insane. I mean, we're playing the Whirler Rogues, so you can just play a Colossus, then you can rogue and push it through. I mean, it's just insane. Plus, we're going to be tapping and bouncing shit. So, I mean, it's not hard to get this guy to connect. I don't see why you wouldn't play him. And the final card in our deck is a Woodland Bellower. It's a 6 mana 6/5. And you can search your library for a non-legendary green creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less. Put it onto the battlefield, and then, of course, shuffle up your library. And the reason we're playing it is because since this is uncommon, we only get to play 3. So, this is copy number 4, because we can play a Woodland Bellower, fetch up a Krasis, tap something down. So for just 6 mana, we get a 6/5, a 3/3, and we get to tap an opposing creature. That's pretty good value for 6 mana. It's better than what Capshow Kite Fins is going to do for you. I mean, I'm not saying Kite Fins is a bad card. I did play it in here at 1 copy. But I cut it pretty quickly because it still dies to Reeve Soul for 6 mana. That's, you know, it's not exactly where you want to be. As far as the mana base, we're playing all 24 land because, again, looking at the curve, we do have a fair number of 4s and 3s. So we want to get to land drop 3 basically all the time, every single time, right away. So we're going to need 24 land for that. And we've also got some 4s, 5s, and 1/6. And, you know, we also want to, even though we have, between our 2s and 3s, we have 26, we definitely want to be able to play multiple spells per turn. So, I mean, you know, hitting 9 drops all the way up to 5 is not a problem for this deck. It doesn't, you know, that's not flood for this deck. So, as far as the color ratio goes, we don't have any 1-drops, so we're going to feel free to play all 4 Guild Gates. And we're going to play both check lands. Obviously, I can't imagine a dual color deck that wouldn't play these. And we're going to skew 1 more color towards blue since we are playing a Rogue's Passage. So that leaves us an uneven number of basics left. Going to play 1 more blue mana than green. We have some double green up here at 5/6 mana, but it's only 3 cards. We have 3 double blue cards on 4. Plus, if you look at the bottom down there, we have 26 blue spells and 13 green. I know that that adds up to 39, but Bounding Krasis is both blue and green. So that's why we have the extra 3 there. Instead of 36 spells, it looks like we have 39. So, yeah, that's why we're skewing a little bit towards blue. But, you know, we still do need enough green sources to cast Visionary and Troll on the second turn. There's 7 of those, so but, you know, we got 14 green sources. That's plenty to do everything we need in the early game, and still find a second source by the time Colossus and Bellower, you know, find their way into our hand. All right, guys, that's the deck tech. You know, Bounding Krasis, Simic Tempo. So I'm going to get into the lobbies now shortly, get some gameplay going on, and we'll get back to the old format. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you in the gameplay.